Hey, welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of a movie like the script. I'm one of your hosts, Bob Rose. I'm at Thundergrunt Bob on Twitter, and the other guys are going to introduce themselves right now. Introduce themselves, not induce themselves. Go ahead.
Oh, man.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. My Twitter handle is at Jimmy R. George.
And I'm Jamie Nash. I am a screenwriter and script consultant, script inducer.
Okay, we all just woke up.
Let's start this podcast over.
No.
Keep
I'm
just
all
kidding.
in. Yeah,
I'm kidding. I'm a screenwriter. I'm a script consultant. I wrote a book called Safe Cat Writes for TV, all that fun stuff. And my Twitter handle is at Jamie_Nash.
Today we're doing one of our we've done this before in the past where we've talked about the classic and then we've talked about the either reboot or sequel. I don't know what you call half of these things anymore. I used to be so adamant about what you call things, but we did this with Candyman, right? Mm-hmm. We also did it sort of with Speed. Mm-hmm. Right? Even though that was Speed 1 and 2. Today we're doing Hellraiser. Our last episode was the 1980s Clive Barker original. And today we're going to talk about the 2022 HULU Hellraiser.
With the same title.
The same title, yes. That's like I often say they should just add the year after these things.
Yeah, why not?
In all the discourse with Halloween, everyone said it's Halloween 2018. For better or not, that is the title of that movie.
Yeah.
This should be Hellraiser 2022.
Yeah,
just add the years after. No one cares anymore. So yeah, we're going to talk about Hellraiser 2022. And first and foremost, we're going to give our review, our thoughts without just the script things. We're like as a movie itself. So who wants to start? Who wants to give their assessment first, or how they felt about it? Jamie, you do it.
Okay, I will.
I like how we're all a little bit. Jamie, you had your shot, but we're all a little sluggish today.
Yes, I am. So my assessment of this movie was, I honestly have to say, this movie did not grab me on the roller coaster ride of excitement I hoped it would. It took me a little bit of patience to kind of, I might have even watched it in two sittings. I've watched it like twice and a half now. So, and I think I liked it better rewatching it because I knew kind of where it was going. It is a long runtime too for a movie like this. It's like 2-hour runtime, and it seems like it has a lot of story, which we'll talk about. Which I'm not sure that might have been the part that got in the way for me a little bit. I think if they had gotten to the house and told me what it was about and kind of explained earlier, maybe I would have leaned forward. But I think maybe in the beginning I was worried it was going to kind of be this plain slasher or something, and I wasn't quite vibing with it until it moved forward a little bit. So I don't know. It's a mixed bag. It's a quality movie. I appreciate why people would like it. I think it's well made. I think it honors Hellraiser. And I should also say, well, I'm a big Hellraiser 1 fan, and Hellraiser 2 was one of the most visceral movies I've ever seen in the theater in my life. I never saw any of the other Hellraisers. So, and I've always heard they're horrible and there's bad stuff in them and stuff. So this one seemed like it was quality, and I could see that people with Hellraiser should be excited about it. I'll just say that the story didn't hook me as much as maybe some movies might.
Jimmy. All right, I'll go. So let's see. I haven't seen the new Pinhead before this one. But I shared on the last podcast that I got on the last Hellraiser podcast that I was hired to write a script that someone else came up with the concept, and the killer was very Pinhead in nature. And so I needed to have like an encyclopedic knowledge of Pinhead. And I watched all 7 at the time in one day, in one sitting, and it was terrible.
Alone.
By myself in the basement on fast forward, by the way, with the sound's still on.
By the way, what did you mean by when you said you hadn't seen the new Pinhead before this one?
Because there was like
there was a reboot. There was a reboot with another Pinhead.
Okay, I see.
It was done to keep the rights. That's why.
Yes.
I see.
So
I don't even know this history. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
he
there's
looks like a baby. He looks weird.
Yeah. I believe this is number 10. Of the series.
To look that up.
We don't need to. Yeah, I think this is either 9 or 10.
I'll look it up.
I'm so out. I'm so out of the loop with Hellraiser. I was going to say there were like 7 or something.
No, there were 7 in 2011 when I watched them all. Okay, I think
this is the 11th film.
11th. Okay, there you go. Yeah,
I got a lot of
Jamie,
I don't know, Tubi watching to do.
Jamie, when I was like managing a video store in the aughts, like Hellraiser movies being released was a common theme. Like I had to rent those really bad ones out.
I remember, not to interrupt Jimmy, but wasn't there one that got converted from a spec script into a Hellraiser?
Yep.
And it was supposedly a really good spec script. And I remember reading that at one point, the spec script, not the Hellraiser version. But
sorry, Jimmy.
No, it's okay. So I think this is a well-made movie. As Jamie said, I love the aesthetics. I think it's really beautiful. And it's really nice to look at. And I love the production value. Like, we get a lot of big sets, which, we don't get these days. We get a lot of practical effects. I like the score, the performances, but I have issues with the story, and the story does some unconventional things in the way that the original did, but somehow, and we're going to sort of like diagnose why, somehow it doesn't help the movie, these unconventional choices that it's making. And so like, it'll be interesting to look at why that is. But I would put it, as someone who's seen 7 of the movies, I would definitely put it as a solid number 3, which I think in these days, in the reboot era, is really as good as you could hope for, right? Like, it's
not going to be number 1 for sure.
If you put it at number 3 in an 11 movie franchise, that's a compliment.
And now I haven't seen 8, 9, or 10. But I would put this as a solid 3, and then part 3 after that.
I'd go so far to say, for me personally, I would say it's probably the best reboot, because it didn't make me feel like upset that they did it or anything. It felt like the right move. But I'd say it was the best reboot since, and maybe I'm alone on this one, but that Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot.
No, that's a beloved. That's a remake.
Wow, that's high praise for you.
I mean, this is a reboot. That's a remake.
I mean, we did the Candyman podcast before, and I love that movie, even though I have some issues with it. So, anyway, So
Dawn of the Dead. I forgot about Dawn of the Dead.
Oh yeah,
I gotta throw that one in.
We'll do this again. Where we just list
movies that we all like. Yeah.
RoboCop. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey.
Okay, but
one.
That's my feelings on the movie, and
So mine aren't. I mean, obviously, I feel like all 3 of us are kind of in sync here. Mine are very similar. I was gonna say I'm a little bit more generous. Like, I think that I love generally the first 3 Hellraisers, even 3, and I think the one Scott Derrickson directed is great. It's I would say that he did Inferno, I believe, in 2000. That was his first movie. Scott Derrickson of Black Phone.
I was going to say, I didn't even know he did a Hellraiser movie. So it shows you how this is a blind spot.
That's regarded as the good one outside of the first few. Like, if you look at all of them, Scott Derrickson's is actually the good one. So I've watched Hellraiser 2022 twice. To me, it's probably like around my fourth or fifth favorite Hellraiser movie. And that's actually, I mean, like I said, it's an 11 movie franchise. I don't feel like I'm insulting it.
Yeah.
I think there's a ton about it that's awesome. The creature designs are great. The performance of Pinhead is awesome. I think all the lore is really
The
cool.
world building,
Yeah, the world
That's
building.
not even on our
lore.
talking points.
Yeah, the world building and the lore of this movie is where it absolutely shines.
Yes.
For the whole franchise and everything. It does more for that than the original.
I think so too.
Like it really does an amazing job. So like when we talk about this, we're putting the script under a microscope for everything, but like I don't feel like we're saying I'm not saying I didn't like it. I liked it. It's not exactly how do I say this? It's not I think there's a little bit of a puritanical vibe to it for me. Like it's not
it's not as
tame.
weird.
It's not as weird. It's not as sexual.
It feels a little studio safe, doesn't it?
It feels a little
It
safe.
does.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit safe.
Even with all of the gore.
Yeah, with all the gore and everything, and you would think like
on paper it doesn't look studio safe, like if I pitched it to what it, but there's something about it that is, for all the updates and stuff like that, it just feels a little safer than some of the wild wacky stuff.
I think when we start getting into the sin and comparing the two, that's gonna also sort of inform why it feels like that.
All the reasons that I love the original and the sequel seem to be kind of missing here.
Yep. And I agree.
That's not as a direct, that's not saying it's bad. It's just like it's missing this air about it. I don't know. It's hard to put into words.
Those movies were daring.
And there's Clive Barker. It's Clive Barker versus I don't know much about this director or anything.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute. Yeah.
Clive Barker has something about his work that will always resonate in those in like the sexual elements and the desire elements. This movie did not have those, and that's where it fell short for me. But I think it's a foundation for a bunch of movies that could.
Yeah.
If they keep going forward, I think it could. I mean, the lore and the world building is incredible. So like, I'm excited for this Hellraiser 2. Whatever that, if that happens, I don't know how it did, but I was going to say, Jamie, how did this do? Like, it made $0
at the box office. Zero. I mean, I think it might be the first movie to ever make $0 at the box office we've done. No, but that's because it's on Hulu.
It had no theatrical release, right?
Yeah, that's right. No theatrical release. And in fact, just for yucks and giggles, I Googled like top 10 on Hulu in the world on October 20th. And I don't even know, this might be like fan rated or something, but it was number 1 on this list, whatever I'm looking at.
Okay, there you go.
Let's put it this way. Number 8 was Grandma's Boy. So
really?
Yeah, there you go. Grandma's Boy is number 8 on this list.
I do love Grandma's Boy.
22 Jump Street is number 3.
Okay.
Everybody's favorite Zombieland Double Tap is number 6.
I do wonder if they're going to create a new system to sort of like the streaming accountability version of the box office numbers. Like streaming. Accountability is the wrong word. Just
like the new Nielsen.
Yeah, where you go and you say this many million people. I mean, I guess all the platforms would need to be super transparent. And how do you do that? But anyway, not screenwriting related.
No,
I get in the whole.
Well, we always talk about if it's a blockbuster, and then now we're in a time where that doesn't mean as much anymore.
We've joked many times that this show might be about a dying art form. And
might? No, Jimmy, it's not might anymore. It is. Like
I got in a whole debate with my wife the other night because she was like, there was some show she wanted to watch because she wanted to give it good ratings, like a show she liked,
Yeah.
She said, I DVR'd it. And I said, it doesn't. And I looked at her, I said, it doesn't matter. You're not a Nielsen family. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was explaining to her the whole Nielsen system. And she looked at me and says, I don't believe that.
My parents are a Nielsen family, by the way.
Oh,
which
really?
was weird. Yeah, to go to their house and see all these boxes all over their TVs and stuff.
And then you got to ask, does cable really matter anymore? Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Jamie, who wrote this shit?
Yes, Bob. Well, this screenplay was written by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski.
And
And Dave, screen story by David S. Goyer.
Oh boy.
So the Ben and Luke, I've kind of been fans of them from early on, and they've had a career I've kind of watched just blossom. Now I bet they're like powerhouses. I think we shared a manager at one time. And same with David Bruckner, by the way. He was in the same group.
I was going to say, he's a VHS guy.
He's a VHS guy. And he's another one that I followed. Him, Ty West, all those VHS guys I kind of watch and I'm fans of, and I kind of root for their movies because they've kind of all bubbled up, from the independent circuit, get one bigger thing after another. So Ben and Luke started with Super Dark Times, if you've ever seen that movie.
Love that movie.
Yeah. And then recently they teamed up with David Bruckner for The Night House. David Bruckner, he's the director, so he didn't have any screenwriting credit on this, but they teamed up before, so I have to imagine he was involved in the scripting of this.
Mm-hmm.
But he started with VHS, but then he had this really interesting kind of Lovecraftian movie called The Ritual on Netflix. That's a really interesting watch.
Fantastic movie.
Yeah. And I always thought he was just going to blow up. And I think this is his blow up movie in some ways. I think the next thing will probably be, if he wants to, will probably be another big studio thing. I think this shows he has studio muscles and stuff, but he was attached to a Friday the 13th screenplay that if you can find it online, it's one of the better horror screenplays out there.
Okay.
And it's out there. It's the he didn't write that one either. Is it Nick Anacosta, I think is the guy's name?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Go Google it. It's out there. It's a really good script, really well written, really fun. And you can, if you're a horror screenwriter, you can learn a lot of lessons from that script. Usually when people say like, what horror scripts have you read that you liked? Or, I think that one has a really good style and it has a lot of interesting stuff in it. So check it out.
Wow.
Cool.
Yep. But it never got made. Which is shocking
to me.
Maybe someday
of the actual remake anything would be better than that of Friday. So
it was right around the time of like when Friday the 13th, they were thinking about going found footage or something. And I think there was a version of it that was found footage. And then they did this version and they just didn't know what they wanted to do. And I think there were some rights issues and stuff around that.
Still are. Yep.
Yeah.
So
have we ever done on this show? We ever done a David Goyer movie? I don't know if we have we?
I don't think so.
I was going to say, how about one of it doesn't really count, but have we done any DC superheroes?
Not that he was involved in.
We didn't do any of the Zack Snyder ones.
We didn't do any Nolan ones either.
Yeah, we missed all that stuff.
We didn't exist yet.
Yeah, right. Like he's a screenwriter where it's like I absolutely love a very small percentage of his movies, and then
same
man, do I have some problems outside of
same.
Yeah, like I almost.
But he needs no introduction as far as like his resume,
right? At all. But
what a career!
He has a very storied career. But part of me is like, dude, stop.
He has some of my, some I really like. Of course, the Blade stuff and Dark City are the ones.
I literally watched Blade 2 yesterday. Like,
nice.
Yeah, like it's awesome. But
I always kind of, I don't know why I'm a fan of some of his stuff. He does so much. I think that's a big part of it too.
I think it's just a quantity issue.
There is a bit of a quantity issue. He does a lot of stuff and he produces a lot too. And what I really like about him is he produces this kind of stuff now. You'll see his name on some pretty interesting projects that I think he gets on.
So maybe he's using his clout to usher in other creators and things like that.
Yeah. I have a connection to him through like Ed Sanchez and Greg Hale. They worked on Freaky Links with him, which Freaky Links was a show that came out right after Blair Witch. It was
on Fox. Yeah.
On Fox. And it only lasted like a year or two. It's kind of like the Fox version of what Blair Witch could be as a TV show. I actually think it was kind of underrated, but
I think it's great.
I think it was a little bit ahead of its time, to be honest.
I didn't know he was involved in that. That's cool.
He was one of the main writers on it.
Oh,
That's
damn.
awesome.
I didn't know that.
On the flip side, I can't remember if he tried to get his name changed or something like that. He tried to get his name taken off. I remember there was some weird development stuff with Fox. He might have like changed his name to some crazy goofy name or something. Not that he's hiding his credit, but I don't know. I had the story in the back of my head that he has like a really funny, like there's a really funny name he used as his pseudonym, but it might not have been for that project. I can't remember.
Oh, David Goyer.
David Goyer.
I never know how to feel about you. Well, let's get into it. One of the things you guys, we always make the mistake sometimes of when we're passionate about talking about a movie, we talk about it too much beforehand in the chat.
Yes.
In our chat. And I got a little. I think we got a little bit away.
Yeah, we did this time. That was my fault. I was like, "What do you guys think?"
It's tempting because you just watch the movie and you're like ready to talk about it. But one of the things that I think came up the most was the monster in the house element of this movie, or the the lack thereof, or the problem with, right? But we talk about monster in the house a lot. Do you want to summarize what we mean when we say monster in the house, Jamie?
Yeah, sure. So we've talked about this a lot lately. So this is the portion where I'll just replay the little tape I made. So here we go.
I would love if you did that.
Let's go to the tape.
Going to the tape, hitting play. So in Save the Cat and the Save the Cat books by Blake Snyder, including the original Save the Cat book, he came up with 10 different genres. And for him, those 10 different genres were really story patterns that he saw over and over again. Monster in the House being one of them. I always give my examples of other ones just to kind of give you a feel. Golden Fleece is a story about somebody like seeking a prize or a trophy, and they could be like quest movies like Lord of the Rings. They're not even seeking a prize, but a destination, kind of a road trip or something. And it could be anything from like Lord of the Rings that has a quest to something like Major League, which is a quest for the trophy, or a sports movie or something like that. So that's Golden Fleece. There's buddy love, romance, stuff like that. And then we get to Monster in the House. And what you mostly see is 99% of horror movies are monster in the house, or as we've been talking about lately, have monster in the house elements. But almost all of the major horror movies you watch are monster in the house. Jaws and Alien and The Conjuring and Insidious and The Thing, and all these movies are monster in the house movies. So monster in the house movies have three main elements. One is the house, which I've kind of usurped as a trap, like somehow they're trapped in some kind of
it doesn't
location.
Need to be a house, right?
It doesn't need to be a house. It could be the world. I kind of view it as the trap. But if you look at a purist, might look at it as a legitimate building, location, geography, something like that.
In Dr. Sleep, it's their minds.
In their minds or something like that. There's some kind of trap, but that's how I've interpreted the house. Premise specific.
Yeah.
There's always a monster, and I've never really seen a monster in the house and that's really not even that loosely interpreted, whether it's a serial killer or a real monster or a group of monsters. That's the one that there's really never a debate. We've never had the debate like, is there a monster
in this one? Is there a monster in this one?
That's the one that never. And then last but not least, there's the sin. And most good horror movies have a sin. Occasionally you see some either not good ones or sometimes ones that are just trying to reflect reality and they're more nihilistic and grim, But the sin is there's some sin that brings the monster about. That there's something that brings the monster. And the example I always give is the Poltergeist example, where they built houses on top of a graveyard. And they just removed the tombstones, but not the bodies.
And often it's not even the characters themselves, even though he is complicit. It's people who are experiencing the collateral damage of someone else's sin.
It's the sins of the humans, just in general.
Yes.
Right.
Somebody committed a sin. Yeah.
And the way I always wrap my head around the sin, and we talk about this one all the time, is I think the sin is important because it plants in the seed of the reader someone must be punished, or you know what I mean? It almost gives us some kind of weird karma.
It's the why.
Yeah. Like these kind of things don't happen if you're good, but if you sin, you're in trouble. It's kind of that moral of the story thing that you get from old-fashioned fairy tales.
It's theme adjacent. sometimes directly is the theme, you know.
Yep. So anyway, that is the monster in the house. So what we're going to discuss is this a monster in the house?
There's definitely a house.
Yeah. First question, Jamie. Since you talk about often how if the trap is escapable, is it a trap? You know,
right.
And like the puzzle box is a trap, but wouldn't they be able to just escape it if they stop playing?
Here's why I think it is a monster in the house. Okay. I'll tell you why I think it is. So I'll use Poltergeist as my example. They could have left that house, but why didn't they? Because Carol Ann's trapped.
Carol Ann's trapped, right? Carol
Ann is part of the house.
That's true. Yes. So she's trapped.
And I think the brother is trapped.
The brother is trapped. Yeah, even if he's dead. Yeah.
And that's why I think it's a legitimate trap.
Okay, cool. That works. That works. And for me, I think like
the brother is trapped as far as they know.
As far as they know. Yeah. In their perspective, he's trapped.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a little bit where it gets wonky. You know what I mean? Because in some ways we really don't know that, or
that's a problem, right?
Until the middle. Yeah. So it makes for a little
it's a little bit too ambiguous as to his state.
Ambiguous is a good word for a lot of things we're going to talk about.
Exactly. Yeah. Intentionally so. And I think that ambiguity is the problem, because ambiguity works in an anti-plot story. Ambiguity does not work in an arc plot story.
And honestly, when I said I had a hard time locking in, this is the section I had a hard time locking into.
Yeah. Yeah, Jamie, like they don't even get to the house till 50 minutes in.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to one of the reasons it's weird. So, and then let's talk about the monsters. Like if they did this thing again, just like Hellraiser, the OG Hellraiser, where the Cenobites are monsters, but they're not the monster.
Yeah, they're not
right.
They're not the antagonist of the movie.
Right. Roland Voight is, and we have a whole section to get to talk about Roland at the end, and I think that's a good place to wrap it up with.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
I would say in this case, it's a little strange. Again, there's a lot strange to this, and we're kind of rolling into the next section because it's like these weird shifting goals, and because you shift the goals, you kind of shift the monsters.
Yeah.
But I would say in this movie, the Cenobites, more so than the original Hellraiser, the Cenobites do act as monsters.
Totally.
Yeah, they're legitimately antagonizing people and killing them
threats
in the first half.
They are active threats in pursuit of this group of people. Yes.
Yeah. And it's I'm not sure how I'd pitch this movie. Like, I guess it would be like if I was doing, and I didn't try to do the log line, but if you tried to pitch this movie, it'd be like after, you know, a recovering addict, after messing with a stolen puzzle box, summons creatures who take her brother, and she must find a way to bring him back before the creatures kill her. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of mess. Yeah,
it's a little weird. But I think it's weird because they don't want to kill her. That makes it a little strange.
And even that, I have a whole little section on that. We'll get there.
It's a little fuzzy to why that is. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I want to bring it up and talk about it.
That's what on my second watch I was trying to pay attention to.
I think that
whose
moment
life was in danger at any given moment.
And here's the weird that's the weird thing about it is this goes back to your, is it a monster in a house? Is it a trap? Well, if the monsters really don't want to kill her, but I guess they do, like if she doesn't ultimately obey, they'll come to her for her kind of thing. But if she's the only one they're after, and she realizes this halfway through, if she just left everybody home, it would be a much safer trip in some ways. You know what I mean? Yes. She could have gone by herself. That's done this stuff.
That's in my reading resume notes.
It's a little strange.
I think also I didn't see it in the notes. But Trevor throws a wrench into a lot of this too. Mm-hmm. And he was my biggest...
later. That's in the villain section.
Okay,
I want to save it.
About that.
I want to save
it because he was my biggest talking point.
I think stacking all these villain conversations at the end is good, and they're all related to why it feels weird.
So,
all right.
I mean, we're kind of dabbling in it already. So let's just talk about the weird structure with the goals and the midpoint and stuff like that. So, here's the thing. When I watch this, I almost think there's another blog to be written, right? And I probably have already written
it. Dude. But, I was thinking that while I finished the second viewing, I was like, Jamie would.
Yeah. There's so many. Next Halloween, I'll write another blog. By the way, if you missed the last blog, it's on SaveTheCat.com, based on conversations here and Monster in the House. Go check it out. But anyway, so there is a thing in horror where, and it's a slow burn thing, but it works in horror much more than any other genre. I see it more in horror than any other genre. Like, it would never work in action, where you don't really lock in to the true kind of game of it all, the true kind of premise, until like the middle section, right? And it still kind of has act breaks, because like when her brother vanishes, like, you could say she has a goal, like, can she save her brother? But it's also a little debatey, because it's like the debate section, because Ken is in it. Like, I don't even know if I can save my brother. Who knows? I'm going to investigate. I'm going to see what happened to him.
You want to kind of explain the lock-in for anyone? Because we haven't talked about it in like 5 or 6 episodes. So maybe there's someone who has not heard of us talk about this before.
Yeah. So I always say, I go to the tape. I would say a good story DNA. So when you're coming up with your story, it should have a hero, goal, obstacle, and stakes. So what is, and by the way, it's funny, because I had a client this week that kind of misunderstood this, and they did it for the setup. Like, it was almost like, so in this case, I don't want to confuse the point. I'll give you the real version, and then I'll get to the setup version. So the real version is, what's your story about? And tell it to me in terms of hero, goal, obstacle, and stakes. So Raiders of the Lost Ark is about an archaeologist who's trying to get the Ark of the Covenant before the Nazis get it, or else the Nazis will get it and win World War II, take over the world, whatever. Right. Okay, so hero, Indiana Jones, goal, get the Ark, obstacle, Nazis, and also mystery, he doesn't know where it is, stakes, they'll take over the world. All stories need those things, okay? So that's where you should start writing your story. You should make sure you have those. And by the way, so just as an aside, because this came up this week, so I told a client that this week, and I said, okay, pitch me your story. And they thought about it, and they thought long and hard. But then they gave me what happened before the story. So it'd be like Indiana Jones's goal was to teach school, right. And then I'm like, well, what's the obstacle? Well, he doesn't really have any obstacles. And I'm like, yeah. But then I realized when they wrote their story, they gave me the before the catalyst story, before the lock-in story. Now, this gets to our lock-in thing. So anyway, when I'm saying give me hero, goal, obstacle, stakes, I mean in Act 2. Like, what's the movie we're watching? What's that thing? And this goes directly into the lock-in. The lock-in moment of your movie is the moment we know who the hero is, what they're chasing, what the obstacle is, and what the stakes are. That's the lock-in moment. In a Save the Cat type beat sheet, it usually happens in the break into 2. If you're doing 3-act structure, it usually happens before Act 2 starts. Okay.
And we've had this debate, and I don't want to derail you because you're on a roll here.
Yeah.
We've had this debate many times about what is the actual lock-in. Is it the moment the audience knows the character, all these things that you're mentioning, or is it the moment the character lines up with our superior position? Like in Back to the Future, we know Marty is in 1955 for 10 minutes before Marty knows he's in 1955 and is now locked into his efforts to get back to the future.
Right.
In Groundhog Day, we know for an entire 10 minutes that Bill Murray is in the same day before he knows that he's in the same day and is locked into trying to get out of that time loop. So the question is always interesting to feel like, is the lock-in when the audience knows the character is in the problem that they need to overcome by the story's end, or is it when the character is quote unquote locked in to seeing that through? Yeah.
Well, I'm more with the audience on that one. I think I was.
I don't mean to mess you up, Jamie.
Oh,
no.
Jamie.
And I tell you what, I think it's great discussion, and I'm happy to kind of derail a little bit to talk about it, because I think the part that clouds it is there is a thing called the ordinary world versus the The unordinary world, right?
The upside down world.
Upside down world. So in Back to the Future, it's a good example. So the lock-in is when we know what their goal is. But in Back to the Future, we don't know his goal, but he's in the upside down world.
That's right.
So that's where it gets a little cloudy. And the truth is, while the lock-in moment usually comes in the break into two, and you could almost view it that way. And I almost think it's better to view it that way. Like I almost think that's the more purest view. So even if they're in the unordinary world, maybe you're still in debate territory, until they, I think that's the cleaner way to do it.
Okay.
When you're teaching people, and by the way, I do think I said that in the Back to the Future, but just thinking about it,
yes,
sure. I think that's if I want to make the math of this and not the art, if I want to take away some of the ambiguity, I think the lock-in should be when they get the goal.
Okay.
And I think that should be the break into two. So the unordinary world is they have a goal now, and that's part of the unordinary. It's like they're in that world, they're locked into that world. But when you teach it, it's very easy to say, okay, well, he's in the past. That's act two.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's so either way really works. So anyway, this isn't math. It's not math. So, however we slice it, as long as it works.
As long as it works.
Because I think we debated in Groundhog Day, it was one thing, and Back to the Future was the other.
Yeah.
They're really kind of the same thing. But something about it felt right in one. I think the problem with Bill Murray is in that movie, the problem with Bill Murray is all over Twitter, but the problem in that movie with Bill Murray is he's kind of in the ordinary world when he's in the unordinary world.
Yes,
in some ways, it's
still,
different.
yes.
It's a weird. It's a strange thing.
Our world is his.
Yeah.
In
so
this one, I did.
Obvious.
But
anyway.
in this movie, I did some time codes I want to throw out there, and we can kind of discuss because it basically speaks to your point. Now, there is way earlier before this, like 25 minutes is around when she gets stabbed with the box and she's high on the playground and she starts hallucinating. So for her, that is the upside down world begins right then and there. However, her brother doesn't go missing until 31 minutes when he goes to the bathroom and disappears.
Right.
That's that she can't find him is 31 minutes. So he's officially missing there, which is ultimately the story engine for her. Rescuing him, finding him and rescuing him. However, it isn't until there's a bunch of debate in between there for between 31 minutes and when she goes to the hospital and finds Voight's old assistant. And that is when Voight's old assistant sort of connects the prologue stuff to our A story and says Voight was the last one who had the box and it killed him and it's going to kill you too. So now she has a concrete connection that this box is the source of her missing brother, and she's now on a mission to figure out how to use what she knows about the box to find her brother. And that's at 38 minutes. And that to me feels like the lock-in. What would you say?
So I think you're right. I think you're right.
I agree. That's what I was going to say.
I think it's a good example because when his brother goes missing and she first sees the Cenobite, she's kind of in the unordinary world, right? Or the upside down world. But it still takes her a few more minutes to get to the lock-in. So
7 minutes of debate. Yeah.
7 minutes. And honestly, that's kind of a long time to and I think it's exasperated by the fact that we're way ahead of her the whole time. We know the puzzle box. We've seen the movie. All that stuff. We know
the meta text of it being a reboot itself means that we're waiting for her to catch up.
I think this is gonna let also when we get into the rooting resume and stuff. It's so weird how we see in movies often that's using superior position can create all this tension, but used in the wrong way. Like in this movie, it takes tension away. Like the fact that we're so ahead of her, but there are things that we don't know that if we did have superior position about, like Trevor, like Voight's plan, that would have made it create more tension. But I wonder if they were like, well, we're already so ahead of her. If you add these things to also be ahead of her in how stupid is she going to seem unintentionally, because we know everything that she doesn't know. But yeah.
Also, it was kind of a search for a twist or reveal. I think they were saving it over what you're talking about, over the tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's, I think, part of the reason why I didn't. That was some of my struggles with the movie's first half. Is it's a late lock-in. And I know all about the Cenobites. I know so much more than she does, and I'm just waiting for her to figure it all out or something to happen that gives me something new to me. I'm waiting for her to catch up so I can get to new stuff. And it takes about 38 minutes before I get to new stuff. There is new stuff. I mean, there's this whole blood kind of thing going on with the.
Yeah.
I assume that's not in any of the other 11 movies. Right?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. It might be, but it's a good idea.
I like
it. Whiteboard idea. Right?
It's a great whiteboard.
It seems like the big thing they added to this is like working out the logic of the first movie.
Yeah, exactly. They were trying to find more connective tissue of the first movie.
Because when we talked last time about the first movie, we kind of joked like, they don't really explain how the guys in the floorboards and and blood brings them back.
Yeah,
but this feels like, okay, well, if we made this and needed to do the math of it, what would it be? And they kind of figured some of that out.
Yeah. So it's always still, even now, is still ambiguous how it kind of works. It's okay,
I'm okay with a little bit of more mystery.
Yeah, it's okay.
So here's my point about late lock-ins in horror, though. Late lock-ins in horror. So sometimes horror movies are almost structured like they don't have a goal at the break into two. It depends on how you want to map it out. Like me, just for my mind, I tend to say they have long first acts, like 50-page first acts, because it helps my mind to fix what I need to do in certain acts. But some people would say the break into two, they just don't have a goal. The fun and games is like investigating the puzzle box. And then the midpoint clicks in and she gets a goal. That's one way, or narrows the goal. Like she's looking for her brother. Now she has a way specifically to save him or something. But what I was going to say with horror, because of the dread in horror, I think that's a big part. And because people not knowing what's going on and having things happen is almost like a horror convention. It's like being in a haunted house and not understanding what the hell's going on is part of the fun.
Yeah.
A lot of movies stretch that lock-in through the first half of the movie. So they don't have to get really plotty until toward the end.
And it works. And it works.
It works.
Yeah.
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 Because I think some of the fun of horror is the characters really not knowing. I think what's wrong with, so if this movie weren't a reboot and a sequel and stuff, maybe I'd feel different about this middle section, because I would be like, who are these weird guys? What's the deal? Why did they
absolutely on its own that lack of knowledge about the world and the mythos would help for sure.
We'd be learning when she learned.
Yes.
And therefore it would be interesting.
Yeah. I wanted to circle back real quick to the sin because we moved past it, and I think it's like one of the most interesting discussions for
please, that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah. So what do you guys, I got my own things, but what do you guys think the sin is of this movie?
Jamie?
Long run time. No,
the sin of our podcast.
Late lock-in. No, yeah.
We got late lock into the actual screenwriting techniques.
So there's a couple things, and usually what I would try to do is figure out what the character's own personal flaw was. Though again, it doesn't have to be that, but usually there's some tangential relation between the character's flaw and the overall sin of the movie. There's something connective.
The overall sin, like we said, it doesn't need to be the protagonist. So
it doesn't.
We're not talking. I know we're not trying to talk about Void, but he would be the initial sin, right, in this story.
But what you're brainstorming is when you're writing these things, you want to have many reflections of that sin, right? You want to have all different characters doing sort of a spider web off of that core sin. Yeah.
What he's doing is the macro version, and she's doing some micro version.
Some other version. Yep.
Exactly what I'm trying to get to is
that's why I was trying to support you there.
My problem, I kind of said this to you guys before. My problem is I don't see much between Riley's sins in the before world, right? versus anything to do with Voight. Right?
I did it initially, but then when I kind of honed in on what I felt it was,
please give me something.
Here's
what you think.
So first of all, let's reboot. Let's call back to the sin of Hellraiser, which is feeding your desire and seeking pleasure at the expense of other people's pain. Right? That sin lends itself to some sexy weirdness, right? That you say that as the sin of the movie, and you can imagine, well, a whiteboard of exploring that sin is going to be really, really risque, right? Really daring. I think the sin of this movie is the same thing, but with a different front end. Irresponsibility at the expense of others' pain. And I'll give some examples of that, because how I got to this was, they're playing with addiction, not doing it well. No offense to the writers. And so I went back to the Dr. Sleep episode where we broke down, like, what is addiction? It's irresponsibility. And Dr. Sleep is basically an exploration of Danny's irresponsibility, which led to the addiction. The addiction itself wasn't the sin. It was his irresponsibility and his lack of being able to control himself. And I think that tracks here. I think Voight's irresponsible with the box. He gives it to Trevor. Who the fuck is Trevor? Right? He's some, quote unquote low life, some
guy.
I
really don't know.
Here's this box that can, like, bring about, like, who knows, like, unfathomable terror, and he just gives it to this guy, right? Like, go feed the box, basically.
I feel like we could talk about just that for an hour.
I know
about that plan in general. I can't.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it. Yeah. But so that's irresponsible, right? That's irresponsibility at the expense of others' pain. Trevor's irresponsible with the box. He does the same thing.
Not to interrupt you, Jimmy, but not just irresponsibility. Like, he literally sacrifices others' pain for his desire. Straight up.
For money, yeah, that's true. So that is desire. That's interesting to say that. That's more like the first movie. So maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe it is more like the first movie.
You're not wrong. It just doesn't read like it should.
Yeah, like it should. It's not that measurable, right? I had to watch it twice and compare it to some other movie that did it better to kind of get to what I think they're going for here. So, and then in the hospital, Voight's ex-assistant, she's irresponsible with the box. Like, she could have done nothing, but she tries to fight it away, and she gets herself stabbed. And like, the responsible thing to do is just, like, don't touch it. Just let it go. Let them go, and you're fine. But she's irresponsible. She brings about the Cenobites in the hospital, and then Riley is just, like, her irresponsibility is everywhere. Like, she's irresponsible with how she's living at her brother's house. Like, she's having sex, like, while they're eating dinner. She's irresponsible when it comes to Trevor, right? She's breaking into buildings with him, stealing things with him. She's got a drug addiction that during the course of the first act, she gets drunk again. Like, so she's irresponsible, out of control with that. And then she's irresponsible with the box. So I think that, like,
man, I get what you're saying, Jimmy. I just don't see it.
You don't see it?
I don't.
I'm finding stuff where it's not there.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I just don't see that connection with Voight. Irresponsibility does not read as his trait for me.
Power is what he wants.
He wants power. I think he doesn't care. He's not like carelessly doing stuff.
So basically it's a mess. Well, he's carelessly doing it post injury, post that thing in him. He's pretty fucking careless.
Well,
he just gives the box gives the box to Trevor.
Well, he is in searing agony that whole time.
Wouldn't you say that was a pretty carelessly thought out plan, though?
Yeah, no, that was, but I guess Jamie, help me here or help Jimmy, because I'm like,
no, yeah, like
I don't see any reflection between those two. I don't. It doesn't read for me on screen. I've watched the movie twice. I get what you're saying. On paper, it might make sense.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's an intent versus execution thing.
Maybe that is true. Yeah. I think the movie doesn't know that. I don't think Riley has any reflection of Voight in any way.
Okay,
in the execution of the film.
would you say then what they're aiming for is the first movie sin, feeding your desire, seeking pleasure at the expense
With
of other
Voight,
people's pain?
Yeah, with
Voight.
Voight. Yeah.
I don't
With the-
see that
with
with
the
The thing
monster.
is, that's kind of where I think the movie loses.
Yes,
But
that's
Riley's sins don't really feel egregious in the ways that the movie thinks they
right.
are.
They're barely explored after the first act.
Right.
So
She just doesn't feel. She kind of just feels like she just haphazardly is involved.
Mhm. Yep.
You know,
I
and
agree.
then you find the twist out, and it even makes you more confused. Like, wait, so it's not just even. It wasn't just her. It was someone else. Kind
Yeah.
of like what?
Well,
Okay.
well, let's take that time to Jamie. If you don't
Yeah.
have really a concrete sin that you're
Yeah,
pointing to,
I do.
I could be off.
The only thing
no, I don't
the-
know.
the only thing I was going to
That's
say,
why I brought it to the table.
this
Yeah.
is why the reason it gets a little messy for me is because, of course, there's the Hellraiser sins, right? Like,
Sure.
I'm gonna intentionally play with this thing, and it's a metaphor for some other, thing.
Right. Yeah.
But then there's a very minor sin that in another movie could be enough, which is she, it's the fact that she's addicted and doesn't seem to even care, and so, or I don't know, I wouldn't say she doesn't care, but she's not really making a huge attempt to fix her problems. And then what she does is she goes and robs a building. Like, that's a sin.
Yeah, she's dishonest.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a sin. That's definitely it.
That's a sin. Like, in another movie, absent of anything, that would be enough to be like, oh, you transgressed, you did this thing, you took a shortcut, and now you're going to get screwed for it. That would be enough.
Mhm.
Like her interaction with the puzzle box was purely
accidental.
It's
Like, she was
accidental,
not.
yeah.
There's zero choice involved with that beyond superficial curiosity, which is like what I was.
She was seeking money. She wasn't even seeking like the desire of the promise of the puzzle
Yeah,
box. or
she
anything.
didn't even think that box was going to give her anything in
Yeah.
the moment.
Yeah.
it reminded me of another a script that Hollywood used to always look for the next one for a long time, which is Don't Breathe in some ways.
Mhm.
Because Don't Breathe, there's the whole robbery aspect, and then that brings about the
The
monster,
monster.
Right.
in some ways.
Yeah.
Now that character has a save the cat. She's doing it for a good reason. I don't think
Yeah.
Riley's doing it for all the wrong reasons. I don't think she really has a save the cat so much. I think she's like, yeah, I get you're right, but I'm going to do my thing anyway. Like, she's immediately like doesn't care about what her brother says. He's like, yeah,
well, I don't know. I got a quote
I think she cares a little bit.
a little bit.
So let's
Yeah.
dig into this, because I think the next two topics are a nice extension of what we're circling around here.
Because I was gonna say something, but I think it's
Go ahead,
actually
say
covered.
it, dude.
Well, I was gonna say, like, instead of, you said that you were trying to connect their two, the mirror of Riley and Voight with carelessness or irresponsibility. You could maybe argue that the two were addiction.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
she's addicted to drugs, he's addicted to this weird pleasure.
Yes.
But in execution terms, here's the puritanical thing. We don't see her really doing drugs to any extent that seems that bad. Like, she kind of just passes out on the playground.
Mhm.
I've had friends who do that. It doesn't even seem that big of a deal.
It's-
And we don't
yeah.
see any of Voight's actual stuff.
Mhm.
We see newspaper clippings about what he was into.
So you don't feel that
Right.
that sin.
We visit his like orgy night that ends up
Yes.
sacrificing the guy, but we don't really see, not that I need to see an orgy,
So-
but you know what I'm saying? We don't
Yes.
see it on
So
the screen to understand that there's a parallel between the
so a
addictions.
literal addiction is possibly the sin.
Possibly. I'm just throwing that out there.
And
right?
that's but it's executed in a way that it's not measurable for the whole movie.
Right.
So we don't feel it.
If you got a montage of her doing drugs and a montage of Voight having like satanic orgies,
Mhm.
I feel like it would read like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
The other movie this reminded me of a little bit was the Evil Dead reboot. Because there's that whole
She's recovering. She's a recovering addict. Yep.
Everybody's trying to like keep her from doing it,
Yep.
but she's still over the rails with it.
And that works. That
She's
works.
out of control, right?
That movie worked much better for me. That's another reboot
Oh, I
that
love
I kind
that
of
movie. Yeah.
enjoyed. Yeah.
Me too.
Now, this is a weird thing because we're about to talk about Riley. Like that movie, I don't know. In some ways, Jane Levy it's kind of like she was the star of that movie, right? I think. Yeah, she was. Yeah. And she is kind of part of the rooting resume. There's just something about her that you're like down with her.
The performance,
the performance and stuff like that. This girl has her charms too. So I mean, I felt like even though this character was playing an addicted character, there was definitely some light to her in some ways. But I didn't. This character did not have the typical rooting resume. A rooting resume is like a bunch of boxes that's checked early on to say we like these people. So you're not like, I don't even care what happens to this girl. She brought it about herself. She's kind of a jerk. I don't care, you know. So if you're in that point where you don't really care about the character, it kills tension. Again, we talked about tension. Because if you don't care, you're not worried about her. You're like, I don't care if she dies. She probably deserves it after
she's a drug addict, doesn't pay her rent, and treats her brother like crap.
And basically got her brother who cares about her killed, you know.
Not just killed, like sent to a living hell dimension, right?
Yeah, it's like, why do we really care about her? You know?
There's the endless debate in the screenwriting world about where, you know, you have the people who say you can't write unlikable characters, and then it's not that you can't write them unlikable. They can be unlikable. They just have to have, like you said, this rooting resume. And if you guys want to hear it, I went and I broke down the rooting resume using Jamie's 8 different types of rooting techniques that are in his book, Save the Cat Rights for TV. So
available now on Amazon.
What I think is interesting is, so to call back to the original Hellraiser, because I think this movie is often trying to like do things that did, even though it doesn't seem like it. The main thing to remember is Julia is an anti-heroine. Like, she's not a hero. She's an anti-heroine. And so when you flip these, because we've talked about a lot, you can take these same rooting resume things and you can reverse them and make them do the opposite of that to sometimes make a great villain, but sometimes it also makes for a great hero when one or two of these, like Johnny in Cobra Kai, when one or two or three of these is reversed, it makes for an entertaining, complex, unpredictable hero like Johnny, right? Like, Johnny's casually racist. That sucks, but it gives him room to grow. Things like that. Here, I think they downturn a bunch of them intentionally to kind of harken back to the same way that Julia is. But since Riley is supposed to be a hero, it feels like emotionally detaching, right? You go like, ugh. So I'm going to go through, and it's really interesting where she does have them and where she doesn't. So they're underdogs. She's definitely an underdog, right? Like, she gets no respect. She's a Rodney Dangerfield, as Jamie puts it. She's definitely an underdog. They're economically challenged. They lack money or material things. They live in a difficult or miserable existence. Very much so.
Yeah.
They're dealing with a disease, either mental or physical afflictions.
Totally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All that tracks. So she's definitely an underdog. Number 2, they care about someone or something. She cares about her brother. I mean, deeply cares about her brother. It's like the one true thing she cares about. What are you going to say about?
I was going to say, you could even argue she cares about Trevor.
She does care about Trevor. I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I think that's actually what makes her less of a rooting.
Okay.
Anyway.
All
right. Number 3, they try very hard to make their lives better. I think during the course of the movie she does, but when we meet her, not so much. So I think that it could be argued that this is a down one. I don't know what you guys think. But
I would agree, and
that's where they flipped it negative there.
Yeah, she doesn't really seem to have a big dose of hope. And by the way, with these, you don't have to do all of them. It's some of them, as many as you can. Sometimes people only have 1 or 2. Sometimes people have 50.
Sometimes
a character just has a pet.
Yep, that's it.
Right?
Sometimes
cat, right?
it just continues for the entire movie. You can stack these.
Right.
to remind the audience why you should root for them. Here's the one that I think is a big negative. I do agree, Jamie, that there's a little bit of lightness to Riley, but I don't think this one is tracks. They're fun. They're sweet, charming personality. I think she's abrasive and combative. She does have one funny line, I think, where Colin says, "What is this place?" And she says, "I don't know, a fuck dungeon." That was funny. That made me laugh.
I also think it's good when she says, like, "You all heard me. You all heard us fucking."
Yeah.
Like so that moment, I can. Yeah.
But that's 2 in 2 hours.
2 hours, right?
I'd like to. It's interesting because I was on a development call a couple weeks ago. And this really stuck with me. Like, we were developing a character, we were coming up with their flaws and their character arcs and stuff like that. And the director kind of raised his hand. He's like, "Yeah, that sounds like a real sad sack kind of boring character. You know, I hate those kind of characters." And then I kind of, a light bulb moment went off. I was like, yeah, those characters aren't a lot of fun to watch. You know, in some movies, it's right for them not to be fun to watch. And maybe this is even one of them. Like, maybe, but would it hurt to have them kind of have some weird gallows sense of humor or something?
Well, for instance, Sidney Prescott has a sense of humor. Like, she's constantly like, you know, she did the will you settle for he wants PG, to see her 13, naked, and says, will you settle for PG-13? And every time someone calls, she's got quick-witted responses to the asshole calling her, thinking it's an actual like just prankster and not the killer. Sidney Prescott is very funny. And I think that's why she's a great horror heroine, you know?
Yeah, because I think we spend so much time as writers doing this kind of character because it's the important stuff. They need an arc. They need to start really far back.
You mean the Riley stuff?
Yeah, the Riley stuff. To make them, that I think it is important to also build up. Why do we want to hang with this character for the next, 2 hours in this movie?
What makes them fun?
I think it's an important thing to also think about when you're doing your rooting resume.
Yep, I agree. Number 5, we know their struggle. They have a painful past. That one's definitely a yes. These next 3, I think, are all negatives. And I really because of that, I think this is why we are all sort of feeling like we weren't that engaged with Riley's quest because of it.
Right.
So, your number 6 is we wish we were more like them. Loyal. Here's the thing. She is loyal, but she's loyal to Trevor, not just her brother. She's loyal to Trevor, who we know is a bad influence. Like, if she wasn't loyal to Trevor, she'd be better off. That's even before we learn that he's like an actual accomplice to the villain, right? So it's weird that the loyalty to a person she shouldn't be loyal to makes her like kind of less engaging. Like, Trevor even says to her, "Do you want me to beat up your brother? Like, I'll swing at him if you want." Like, that's not somebody you want your main character to be in a relationship, even before they rob and start robbing stuff. And then they never give up. Well, like, if she gave up, everybody would be alive. So like her insistence to continue playing with this box is actually a bad thing. Like, it actually makes her less engaging. So it's interesting that they give her that, but it's a bad thing. And then here's the one. She lives by an honorable code. No, not at all.
She didn't have anything.
She's dishonest. I mean, we see multiple scenes when we first meet her about being dishonest. So there's that. They're just like us. They share common mundane problems. I don't think her problems are very mundane. Like, they're very out of the ordinary. Like, she's living with her brother because she's in a 12-step program. I don't think her problems, I don't think she's just like us.
There's some like struggling to find a job. Or,
economic stuff.
Paying rent is paying rent.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm being a little too hard on that one.
But the one is causing those other things, right? Like, the addiction and the 12 steps that are causing those other problems.
This is a big one. They're the best at something. I don't think that.
No, she's not good at anything.
Yeah, and I think the movie wants you to feel like, well, she's the best at solving the puzzle, but because everyone who picks up the puzzle in this movie immediately is able to make it move in a way that I feel like the other movies aren't, it doesn't feel special when she's solving the puzzle. It just
honestly,
feels like a goddamn Rubik's
I don't
Cube.
read it like that. I did not read it like that.
No, it doesn't read like that.
I read like the puzzle just lets you solve it. Like it doesn't actually matter. That is not a talent to me.
But I don't think that's how it is in the text.
Right. Well, it's fine. It doesn't read on screen.
No, I know.
By that.
So because of that, she doesn't feel like she's good at anything. So there you go.
She doesn't have a secret weapon. Like,
so there you go.
Right.
Yes. So there you go. Out of Jamie, out of these 8 common rooting interest techniques that you list, she is missing. She has negative version of 4 of them. So it really informs a lot about why you feel why at least we are feeling the way we feel about her. And then I also did the rooting resume, which I think I was really surprised that she has most of them, but she's missing one that every single time we've done this, we have found is true, and it's not true for her. So I want to go into it real quick. So things that need fixing is a Blake Snyder thing. We've been heavy on the Blake Snyder in this episode.
So you said rooting resume, but you say she has one thing that needs fixing that everybody else had that this movie she doesn't.
She doesn't.
Okay, but things that need fixing. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, I can set up things that need fixing, or you can do it. Do you want to do it? It doesn't matter to me, Jamie.
Yeah, things that needs fixing are Save the Cat thing again, Blake Snyder's first book, and basically in your setup in the first 10 minutes of a movie, you usually set up all the things that have gone wrong in a character's life, or all the things that are messy in a character's life because of their flawed approach to living. And so there's a bunch of stuff, and Jimmy's about to go over them.
Yeah, and often what happens is, so I'm reading amateur scripts 5 days a week. That's what I do for a living, and I'm reading people who are trying to learn the craft and learn how to do this. And often, I will read a script that only has one thing that needs fixing, and that is the A story. Trying to get the arc and nothing else. And what that does is that leads to a lot of repetitive conflict and not a lot of dynamic, complex scenes that are creating tension through a bunch of different ways for the main character, and it doesn't make for an entertaining read or watch. So what you want to try to do is try to give them several things that when we introduce them in the setup, are a problem for them, that over the course of the story in achieving the goal, they're going to work through these other things as well. Like Groundhog Day has 18 things that need fixing. That's why it feels like such a profound change when you get to the end and all 18 of those things are no longer a problem for them. He's worked through it through his eternity of the time loop. Here, so these fall into 5 categories. Number 1 is changes in attractiveness, false beliefs, or personality. She definitely doesn't believe she's going the wrong way. She definitely thinks there's nothing wrong with the approach she's taking to life. She definitely is unwilling to accept responsibility for all of her actions. She's totally cool with being dishonest. And so I think false beliefs is a big one here. I don't know. Do you guys think that tracks?
Her only guilt about her life comes from her brother yelling at her. Mm-hmm. So yes, I do think you're.
Yes. So number 1, she's got that. Strained personal relationships. I mean, that one is the big driver of the movie with her brother. I don't think there's any debate there. Not being entrusted with responsibility or not being able to handle responsibility. Their big argument, he says to her, I'm not out here trying to police your every life choice. And Riley says, you just want to make sure I can handle myself, right? Message received. So that one, not being entrusted with responsibility, definitely tracks. So she's 3 for 3 of the things that need fixing. Here's the one that I don't think that is there. Being invisible to key people or seeking invisibility. She definitely doesn't seek invisibility. And she definitely, everyone cares about her. Everyone on the screen is invested in her life and her well-being. And it's interesting that not having that one feels so glaring, because when we've gone from hero to hero to hero that we've gone through, and we've done many horror heroines, We've done the things that need fixing. And this invisibility one is definitely always there. So it's interesting that it's not here and how that creates less of an engaging hero.
She seems like a cornerstone in all their lives.
She is the center of attention. She's the opposite of this. Yes. And
like Nancy feels like no one wants to even listen to her, like in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right. Yeah.
But like for some reason Riley's like
she's
the center of the drama, man.
Yep. So it's interesting how that change just leads to a less engaging hero, right? I think it's instructive to look at that. And then the last one is definitely here. Others don't believe in you, or you've given up on yourself. Riley even says to Trevor after she's argued with her brother, I don't need him to be proud of me. It would just be nice if he wasn't ashamed of me. So that's definitely given. Other people have given up on her. So even though like Matt is trying to do well by her, she definitely feels like others have given up on her, you know? So, but you know what, Bob, you talked about, I think this is a good time to just weave into, you mentioned the addiction problem and how it's like we talked about, it's barely there.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't even, like when I think about the movie, the only reason I think about the addiction is it's on our talking points. I wouldn't even discuss it as if I was talking to someone off a podcast about it. That's how little it matters to me with the movie.
It really only plays out twice, like in the beginning when it's like, you know, a guy you met in a 12-step program, you know, that says that.
There's that,
and then
and
the
that
next
doesn't even
scene
make sense to me. That whole
that was his ruse, right? He wasn't in the 12-step program. He was looking for victims.
But I'm saying, like, it was odd. Matt's rooting resume, him saying that, I was kind of like, what? You can't date people that are in a 12-step program?
No, I know. It's so dismissive and judgmental.
I've never heard that.
It actually made me dislike the brother. I was like, fuck this guy.
He's kind of an ass. Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but I listen to a lot of Mark Maron, and I think there is like a codependency issue.
So there's a law, there's a rule.
Yeah,
they didn't make that clear. Yeah,
but that's not a common
rule
knowledge
number
thing.
one. That's all they need. They just needed that tweak. That is 12-step rule number 1 or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Sure. But the movie needs to the movie needs to tell me that.
Yeah, I don't know that either. So, but yeah, no, so Jamie, do you see this a lot where clients you're working with, writers you're working with, they create this backstory and this wound and this stuff, and then they don't do anything with it? Do you see that a lot?
The things that need fixing is the most common thing I comment on when people send me either a beat sheet to look at or a script. It's the thing they skip the most. Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, when I say the most common thing, and maybe in Act 1, it's one of the things they skip the most is the thing that need fixing. They just skip right over it. And the other tricky part is because a lot of people, they'll misinterpret it and you know what they'll do. You probably see these all the time. The foreclosure notice on the table, right? That's the one that they'll do, right? It'll be the foreclosure notice.
Got bills to pay, man.
A stack of bills. But the key to make it really good is to figure out dramatic scenes.
Yeah, conflict in the middle of it, right? Like like literally someone is throwing out their shit. Their landlord is like throwing out their shit
out
the window,
and like we meet them while they're coming into the house, and their landlord's in the middle of throwing the shit on the. Oh my god! Wait, like
what that does.
A wife is throwing a husband's stuff at.
Or exactly.
The divorce is imminent or something, right?
What that does, it gives your character a chance to show character. You know what I mean?
Show how they respond in the face of these conflicts.
Are they going to bribe the person? Are they going to con the person? Are they going to fight the person? Are they going to do all the
above?
And
that defines character. But
show don't tell. Right?
Show don't tell. Yes. Where I was going with that question was to bring up that it's really important that if you are going to introduce these things that need fixing, then you need to bring them up. You need at least a beginning, a middle, and end for these. You need at least 3 beats.
Yeah. You revisit.
At minimum, if you're gonna do this in the setup, you need a middle and an end, and you can't just have like. If you're doing a short, it's different. It's like 10 minutes. But if you're doing 90 minutes, you can't be like, oh, they've got this problem on page 10 in their lives, and then like have them like solve the problem in on page 95 when we haven't been reminded of the problem since page 10. So what I see a lot, this addiction thing is so, not specifically addiction, but this thing where they have this wound that is sort of, you know, created a lot of problems in their life, but then that wound is not a conflict for them for the rest of the story. And then it's sort of, I call this use it or lose it.
Like I was expecting her addiction to come up either as like a form of the Cenobites using it against her, or even like I could even see if something like I was anticipating she would end up either becoming a Cenobite or some or like submitting to them because her addiction is an addiction to pain and suffering. So she like metaphorically is like, let me do it. I'll just do it.
So I think it speaks to another reason why there isn't this sense of like this really memorable journey with this character. Because we don't, it doesn't really, it goes, there is one beat. So it's 80 minutes. They're looking, so 35 minutes, Riley tells her Trevor the story that she just told her brother's roommates, that she just told the cops about being high. And she says, 35 minutes, she's like, I'm clean now though. Like I shouldn't be seeing monsters. I'm not on drugs. So that's at 35 minutes. The movie never mentions her addiction again with her on the screen. Trevor tries to get Nora to drink at the bar. But Riley's not there, so it's irrelevant. Like it's not a conflict for our hero when somebody's talking about their addiction in another room and it has nothing to do with them. It's not a growing pain if Riley's not there,
right?
Basically,
and to think about this in reverse to kind of jump into our next talking point because I'm itching to do so.
Yeah,
like so in some ways, her arc could say, oh, well, she is going to fix her addiction and stuff like that because she's made a choice.
She's going to gain control over her. Yeah.
It could, even without showing or mentioning addiction.
It's like, Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. We might see that this is a new person reborn, and this person is at least going to give it a really good try because of what they've been through.
They need to overcome it to fight the monsters. Yeah.
But in this movie, and this is one of the things I was really struggling with, and it really didn't necessarily affect my engagement from beginning to end, but that end, it seems like they came up with that ending and they like squeezed it in there, right? Because it almost like they were high-fiving themselves a little bit because it was cool. It's a cool idea.
What specifically are you talking about?
Maybe I misinterpreted this, but basically her choosing the lament configuration. So the lament configuration is just a choice to live with your guilt, like to not take it kind of subverted what the lament configuration was.
It did. Which I loved that.
And it seemed like a great idea on a whiteboard. Like, what if the lament configuration was it? Yeah, that's it. Do it. We got a movie. Green light that. So, but the problem is it doesn't show an arc. I don't know. I have a hard time with it. It doesn't connect me to like what she needs to do to grow.
So
the problem is too is like that the ending is just them kind of like guilting her verbally. Like, if you just choose to do nothing, you're gonna have to feel guilty about your brother. And like, it's not like they're gonna actively make her feel guilty or torture her with thoughts for the rest of her life. They're just like, hey, you're probably going to really hate thinking about your brother the rest of your normal life after you make this non-decision.
But it's probably better than having your skin ripped apart or something.
Right, right. It's just such an odd, like, so she just does nothing?
Well, no, so I'm going to, here's what I want to do. And if you guys don't think this is going to get to a good answer discussion, we don't have to do this. I want to, because I've talked about old way, new way before, but we've never looked at it when it doesn't really work. And this is interesting because I think the problem is, Jamie, there isn't a clear old way, growing pains, new way surrounding this, and so I'm gonna say the new way, expanding on what you just said.
Okay,
and then we'll go backward. And we'll see, is this why it doesn't feel right? So the new way, the climactic moment that's supposed to be the moment of growth and change, where we feel like Riley's like she's through the journey, she's grown, and now she's triumphantly a better person, and that's how she gets out of this situation, right? I think that really is what they want us to feel. I don't think that they want us to feel like what.
It's just not. It's not how it's constructed at all.
It's that character arc thing that she does something at the very end of the movie that the original character would have never done. Like that seems like what they're trying to.
They're trying to do, right? Yes. So it's the after snapshot. So Riley's new way, with her dead brother begging her to choose resurrection, even though it's her greatest desire to bring him back, she chooses not to. And Riley says, Bob, you had a rant earlier on the chat about this, so you can chime in.
Yeah.
She says, I've seen your rewards. I know my brother's gone. I don't want anything from you. And the priest says, you have chosen a life of regret, knowing everything you've done, everyone you've hurt and lost. Your suffering has barely begun. You've chosen to live, to carry that weight, bitter and brief. You have chosen the Lament Configuration. Okay.
So the problem that I was complaining to you guys about with my problem with this is at this point in the movie, she has been given the information that there is no good choice. It's all a trick. She has this factual information that, you know, it's all going to be bad, and they're kind of they're decepting everyone. Like, you're gonna end up being tortured.
Deceiving everyone, yeah.
You're gonna end up being tortured horribly, no matter what goes on with all these configurations. So her making the choice that you just described, Jimmy, is not one of character growth or anything. It's just her going, well, you guys are liars, and I'm just gonna do the nothing thing because it's the only logical factual choice to make.
There's no real good.
It feels like
there's no upside to it.
It doesn't feel like a dilemma as it wants you to feel like, right?
And then you got Pinhead
because
going,
you don't even know if her brother is real standing there. It's probably just a trick.
It's a trick. So, and then you've got Pinhead saying, well, you're gonna feel bad the rest of your life, and then you, in your mind, you're saying, so what your logic is, Pinhead, is that I should just be tortured for eternity. Like,
I feel pretty guilty about that too.
Like, I can't save my brother, but I have to be tortured to not, or I could just be depressed the rest of my life. I mean, like,
it's not a very. It wants you to feel really like odd. It's meaningful, but because of all of those factors that you just stacked on top of it, it actually is a pretty simple choice.
Right. It's pretty,
So there's that, right? So that
it's not a character choice. Anybody would make that choice.
But I think the way to make that work, like in a hypothetical world, is if whatever she was choosing was something self-serving versus self.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the movie wants you to feel like her greatest desire is bringing her brother back. She has moments earlier in the story where she hones in on, if she does all these things with a box, resurrection is her gift, and she can resurrect her brother, which is the exact same goal Julia has in Hellraiser 1. So again, they're hearkening back to the first one and playing with it in different ways. However, it's hard to measure.
It's not just hard to measure. We have viable proof in the story that there is no reward. The guy who has the half man of the story has literally said, "There's nothing."
Yeah.
If you get sucked in, that's it. There's no help. It's not coming,
and we're seeing it.
Seeing it. So like and like I said, I wanted to say this real quick because the choice that she makes, saying it's not a character choice, what Jamie said. It's not just that the person that she was at the beginning of the movie would have made the same choice at the end. It's that any human on Earth would make that same choice. And that's a problem to me, right? Like, that's huge. That's really a bad problem.
You're right. Speaking to the fact of it being kind of a meaningless choice when you know everything that she knows.
Hey, would you rather burn in
that's
hell
not
forever?
Really your brother. That's a Cenobite in disguise hallucination.
Would you rather not save your brother and burn in hell forever, or just feel kind of bad the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Either or. Choose. And most people would choose the second, the latter.
So I'm going to bring it back to the original moment where she opens the box. And I think this is the other problem with that. There is no old way, new way. So we've talked about like a really good way to show how your character is growing and changing is to present us with a scenario that gives them the same choice twice. So in the beginning of the movie, they make the wrong way choice. And in the end of the climax, you give them the same exact opportunity to make the right choice or the wrong choice. And we see how they've grown and changed by them ultimately choosing the opposite of what we saw them choose in the beginning. An example, Spider-Man No Way Home. It gives Peter the same wish choice in the beginning and the end. And in the end, he makes a difficult choice, but it's the right choice that he didn't make when he was first given that opportunity in the beginning. Here, I don't think she has a choice in the matter when she unleashes I think that's the problem. She doesn't, unlike the Hellraiser, the original Hellraiser, she's not opening the box on purpose.
She thinks it's like a trinket that's worth money.
I think that is the problem, right? Yeah. So her original way is, she's high and it's out of superficial curiosity that she's playing with the box. And then when she opens it accidentally, she's high. She doesn't even know what the hell's going on. And they say, come with us. And then the priest, Pinhead, says, if not you, bring us another. And then chains shoot out of her body and they hook into her brother and lure her brother there. But the entire time she's actually saying no. She's not choosing for them to take her brother instead of her. It's just happening. Like, we don't even get concrete evidence as to why they take her brother instead of her. She didn't say, take my brother. She didn't think about her brother. All of a sudden there's chains coming out of her body and hooking her brother. And then they take her brother instead of him. And then she's like, I didn't want this. And they said, oh, but you did. But that's not,
to some degree. It's almost,
not a choice, right?
It's almost like that they should treat it like a Lovecraftian tale where we can't understand the Cenobites at all.
Yeah.
And that she has to subvert how to fight them in some way.
Yeah.
But none of that happens either.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not about like how do we.
Well, I mean, there is. She's like, I can stab them with the box, and yeah. But sure. I just don't.
So late.
I just don't. Yeah, I just don't think that original moment is it's an old way, but it's not a choice, right? So it doesn't bring us into this parallel beginning before World Riley, new Riley, that if she had been given a choice that she chose the wrong way when we met her with that box when she first opened it, and then she has this second confrontation with the Cenobites where she gets to say, I choose wisely, right? Like, I kept hearing the Indiana Jones last, you have chosen wisely.
From listening to you talk about it, it's almost like if at the beginning, if they said like, we either take you or we take someone else, and then she says, take someone else.
Right. That's all you needed.
And then at the end, it's like, I guess give her a choice between her or her brother, maybe? Like take his place, or
it's a bit of a monkey's paw kind of scenario. Like take someone else, and then we'll take your brother. Now you're ours. Yeah. It's kind
of so anyway, I think it's really interesting. I think that's one of the reasons why it doesn't feel like this actual moment of growth, because there's nothing to compare it to. And even like Bob said, it's not really a meaningful choice. Like, it's an obvious choice.
I don't know. I can't remember if we talked about this on the Ready Player One episode, but I've seen a lot of breakdowns of why that movie doesn't work for people. And it's because the protagonist literally figures out how to play the game. And that's the big reveal at the end of the movie. That's like his moment of, wait, what if I do this? But it's not a character moment. It's him just figuring out what the rules of the game are.
Yeah.
Same thing with her. It's like she just figured out that there's no choice. I'm going to play the game, and I'm just being depressed. Not going to hell is the win. It's like, she played the game. She didn't change. She didn't become new.
Yeah.
She learned nothing.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, do we say what we think the theme of the movie is?
We didn't say, and that's yeah. Jamie, you got something?
This one's a tough.
Don't do drugs.
Yeah, because we
don't do drugs and play with guns.
Yeah,
basically,
don't play Rubik's Cube while you're drunk.
Right, right.
So I don't really have because there's no arc. It's hard to pin down. Because here's my problem, like with I'm going to summarize kind of what you just said in a weird way. In the end, she chooses to be guilty. So we compared her to the beginning. She's probably in the next scene worse than she was in the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, and did she? I don't know. It's kind of nihilistic.
Maybe they want it to be that way, right?
I guess
but it
so.
feels like, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like they're going for a big final.
It doesn't feel subversive at all. It feels like it's a cheeseburger horror movie.
They want it feels like they're going for the cheeseburger arc plot. Yeah.
But then in the end, it's like she really is legitimately worse off than before. And it's not because it's a tragedy where she had a lesson to learn that she didn't learn and continued. She just kind of stayed flat. There really weren't any big lessons to learn. Like once she was on this ride.
She lived through the plot.
She lived through the plot.
Yeah.
I don't think that's their intent, though.
Yeah,
maybe not. We can't truly know that.
I don't. But... Yeah, no, and it took us 90 minutes to get here, but we've said before. If you haven't listened to this podcast before, we acknowledge that these solutions may have existed on the page, and they may have even shot those things,
but editing,
and then in the editing, it got lost in the edit, and we're only commenting on the final product as the story. But I don't know that they're trying to make it what you say, Jamie, even though I agree with that's what it feels like.
Yeah, no, I hear you, because I think that lament you've chosen the lament configuration. I do think there is a part there that they want that to be like she made a really difficult choice that she would never have made in the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And now she is on the path to righteousness or whatever.
Yep.
She's on the dark path to righteousness. But I can't get the logic behind like it doesn't it doesn't compute.
She already was a depressed, guilty feeling person.
I know.
Depressed now.
No, I know.
The whole movie was just like
we're missing that old way choice that shows us the opposite of that. That's what we're missing.
It's almost like if I reverse engineered it, if she was a person in denial about her problems, if she was a person that lived like almost a privileged life, but had a lot of skeletons in the closet or something like that. And then she finally almost admitted to them and chose to live, I don't know.
I'm not trying to make the transition.
None of us have talked about theme, by the way.
Well, no. I'm not trying to make the transition here, but like in talking about how we don't all have a theme, our next talking point, the theme to me is with the next talking point, which is about Voight, which is an easy, pretty much be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
Or the monkey's paw of it all.
But she's not wishing for anything.
No. What I'm saying is, the theme, if there is one, is not with Riley whatsoever.
I agree. Yes.
If there is a theme, however small or blunt, it's with the villain, and that makes it all the weirder of how you feel about everything.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one that I'm like, oh well, he at least learned something.
Yeah.
In the worst way possible.
So first thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of an off-screen villain. And I want to kind of compare, even though it's apples and oranges in what it is, I would just want to talk about it. So in Pig, when we broke down Pig, it was unconventional in that the villain was completely off-screen for pretty much the entire movie, and we never were following along with the villain's plan. And we had no orientation as to the state of his plan. But it worked. It was like that complete lack of orientation created this huge sense of dread.
Right.
Here, for most of the movie, we have an off-screen villain, and I think it doesn't work because we didn't know he was the villain. Like the prologue sort of leaves it like a closed loop. Like he looks up, we want to know what happened when he looks up and he has asked to talk to whatever, but like it feels closed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when Riley,
that could just be him initially opening the box again,
right,
or something.
right.
It didn't mean anything about Riley's.
But like when Riley is investigating the life and times of him, that's the first time that we even get a clue that he's still alive through that investigation, and that's 54 minutes in. So, and then, you know, she gets in, she finds his journals and everything, but by that time, it still feels like he's dead, and that's 60 minutes in. And so there's zero tension around another villain. And then, even so, 63 minutes, someone attacks Nora with the box, but we don't know it's him. We don't get to see him. It isn't until 65 minutes that it's revealed that he's alive and that he's in that house, like Phantom of the Opera of his own mansion. And it isn't until 82 minutes that he attacks Trevor, and we learn that he was a villain this whole time too, with this plan to, he says, all you had to do was feed the box.
Can we talk about?
Yes, let's talk about
what I don't. This is honest. I don't know this. I don't want to veer too far off our normal format, but like, I can, for the life of me, not understand what Voight's plan with Trevor was at all. The second viewing actually made it worse for me, trying to understand their motivations and what they were trying to accomplish.
I thought he was trying to do what she did in the end, which was like, you know, get the ultimate wish or something like that.
But why?
Like,
so there's seven.
Why did
here's
Trevor
what
have to? Why was it? I hate being this guy, but why is the plan to make Trevor go make someone fall in love with you that needs money to break
part of
into a place to steal the thing?
Right. Why not just hand it to her and say, "Hey, try out the puzzle box"?
Isn't Voight like super rich? Can't he just pay like?
Pay his sex workers like he did at the beginning,
not that we want that to happen, but like it just
but
like,
he might, you know, he might.
I think
if he just needed victims, it seems like he already had that down.
I think the plan was simply to get the box, do each configuration and kill another person, and then bring it back with its last diamond. So
Jimmy,
that
not debating that, but there is no explanation to the audience why that plan was how it went about.
Why it had to be so complicated.
What is going on with this?
I know.
And then Trevor, the whole time, the second viewing was even more baffling because the whole time he's like pushing her away from doing any of it.
Yeah,
he's like saying,
guilty.
Stop,
he's
stop.
like, no, wait.
And I'm like, what is the plan here?
There was a lot of stuff that when you watched it on second viewing, you were like, they're really cheating here with Trevor. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
As opposed to like planting the seed of like he's the traitor.
So yeah,
it's almost like they wrote it up to the point of page 75, and then they made him the traitor.
He like was secretly falling in love with Riley or something, but they never say it. They never say it. So I'm just like, what is Trevor doing in this movie?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't even get full orientation about the plan until 92 minutes.
I will say
is generous.
Go ahead.
I will say in regards to the off-screen villain, I do think this movie uses the Cenobites as the villain.
No, I agree.
Totally, yeah.
I agree.
I think his thing is purely an all is lost betrayal twist with a little bit of a wrinkle. And that's all it really is meant to be. You know, so he's not really the villain per se. That's just there to kind of say, and this is why it happened. Big twist. Your boyfriend isn't.
Yeah, there's.
But the Cenobites are still the monsters.
You're right.
So, I don't think it's quite like he's the off-screen villain, so to speak.
Okay, but he's the one with the plan that gets them all to the house and gets everything is happening because he's pulling the strings behind everything.
I know it just tell me that this wouldn't work. If Trevor just showed up to Riley and is like, I know you need money. Here's this box I found. Maybe we can hawk it. And then she starts playing with the box. Like, why did what is the storage container thing? Why is it that?
I thought the exact same thing. I was like, why doesn't he just show up and say, hey, check this out. I found it at a yard sale. Boop. Oh no, it's a thing. Like, I was just like, why do they rent out a storage container to put it into a safe for them to fake break in? I don't know.
I'm confused too. I mean, I had thought that they were actually needing to break in and get it from the lady in the hospital and locked it up. But now you're saying that the break-in was fake.
Wasn't it?
I think it was.
Okay.
It's funny, Jimmy. Now that you say that, though, I second guessed myself. I was like, well, maybe it had something to do with that lady in the hospital.
Yeah, the lady in the I think they're trying to say that because we didn't get any explanation is why. I think they're trying to say like Trevor's first step was to break the box out of this warehouse for Voight from the old lady in the hospital who used to be his Trevor. Because she used to be Trevor. She's a half man for Voight.
Okay, once again, though, I don't understand why Riley is the person that was involved. There's no reason to pull Riley into this from Trevor or Voight's perspective.
Well, Trevor, I mean, I think they were trying to insinuate that he went to a 12-step meeting just to find an easy target, who he deemed an easy target. I mean, and imagine if, like, there's a version of this. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring up. I wanted to talk about all this because I think it impacts the tension in a really bad way, taking this approach, like not giving us superior position about Trevor's motives and not giving us superior position about Voight's plans. It's a worse experience for the viewer because of that, in my opinion. And I see this a lot where it's the opposite. So it's an arc plot movie, right? And I think a lot of in the beginning, Bob, you mentioned this ambiguity. Mm-hmm. As like a common feeling you're getting this. So here's the thing, like Jamie, do you want to introduce real quick the triangle of arc plot and then we'll go into that?
Sure.
I think it's relevant.
Yeah, it's a Robert McGee thing. Robert McGee is about to have his last live lecture.
Yeah.
We talked about that last time. So Robert McGee has this idea that there's 3 types of stories. I really like this because it helps explain things. At the top, there's what's called an arch plot, which is most of the movies you see.
The cheeseburgers.
The cheeseburger movies.
Marvel movies, right.
It's a hero with a goal. It's linear. It's tight. You know, it's got like Chekhov's gun kind of stuff. If you set something up, you pay it off. It has closed endings, not a lot of ambiguity. It all is nice, tidy math. On the other hand, you have mini plot, which is a lot more like your Sundance movies or your day in the life movies. Not a lot of plot, random kind of scenes, could be multiple characters. Everything doesn't tidy up in a bow as much. And then over on the other corner, you have surreal, which is more your David Lynch. It's more a vibe, right? It's
vibes. Those are vibes.
Yeah.
Cheeseburgers versus vibes.
So
right?
The question really in this case, are we doing arch plot? There's a touch of surreal, but arch plot or mini plot. And this one seems 85, 95 percentile in the arch plot category.
It wants to be an arch plot horror movie, commercial, safe as it possibly can be, playing with this. And ambiguity, in my opinion, does not have a place in arch plot storytelling, because once a hero has a goal, we need to understand the progress or regression they're making for the duration of the story. And ambiguity does the opposite of that to a frustrating level.
I'll clarify one thing to that. So ambiguity might have a place in like the mythology and stuff like that.
Yes.
But the storytelling elements.
Yes.
You should be very
like
clear.
The villain.
Is key. Yeah.
Like, where is the villain? What is he doing? How do we stop him? Those things are not things that help when you intentionally make it ambiguous.
We don't need to know like how the Cenobites exactly work. That's fine.
Right.
We need to know.
Thank you for clarifying for me, guys. Yes.
Yeah. No. Well, I'm saying what you just said. Like, we don't need to know how they work or why they do what they do. They just are these beings that do these things. But you need to know what Voight is doing.
Yeah.
And you need to know how
why
close he is to succeeding. So we get that update. They literally give you a goal status update at 82 minutes. Trevor says, things took a turn, but I'm handling it. We're on track. We're only one configuration away. That is on the nose. It's fine. I appreciated it. That is a goal status update for the audience about the villain's plan. But before that, we don't even know, is he alive? That's ambiguous.
Right.
What is he doing? That's ambiguous. How is he doing it? Trevor, that's ambiguous. So I think it plays against the movie. It works against the movie, the level of ambiguity. And I see that a lot when I'm reading scripts, because all of a sudden, I'll read a script that's trying to be an arc plot Indiana Jones, and then we have this 10-minute surreal sequence where I don't know what's happening. I don't know who I'm watching. I don't know how it has any relation to the goal. Is the villain in this sequence? And it's like all of a sudden it becomes an anti-plot movie for 10 minutes. And that just doesn't work in an arc plot story like this.
Usually what I find, and this is especially true when I teach college students, is usually they end up in mini plot by mistake.
Yeah.
But then by the time they get there, they don't want to admit it was a mistake because they don't want to do the work to fix it, is a lot of times what happens.
They're like, I want this one section to be like Twin Peaks. No, you either choose that it's going to be anti-plot and Twin Peaksy.
Yeah. If you find yourself saying things like, I don't know, it's, confusing, not knowing who the hero is part of the fun of it, then you're in mini plot territory.
Yeah.
Or not having, people in real life don't have goals. Well, then you're in mini plot territory. And there's nothing wrong with
No, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that.
But I would say 90% of the people also writing out there are trying to write arch plot, not mini plot. So just be aware.
For people listening, what you guys are saying, what we're all saying is the movie thinks it's an arc plot.
But it keeps playing in mini and anti-plot territory.
Right. Yeah,
that's
in
the
ways
is
that
the movie
hurt,
thinks it's something it's not,
in ways that hurt the emotional engagement for the audience. We cannot root against the villain if we don't know that they have a plan that we need to root for our characters to overcome,
or even know who the villain is for most.
So
of
if
it,
we can't root against the villain's success, then we feel nothing about them. When they have all of a sudden they're like, we're almost there. What do you mean? We are 1 minute away from blowing up the Death Star. Well, I didn't know there was a Death Star.
Also, there's a huge missed opportunity with Trevor as a part of as a villain in the movie, where it's like, if he did have some sort of sub story where he was falling in love with Riley while trying to enact his villainous plan, it is not shown. So his death also feels completely nothing. It's like. But if he loved her, it would feel something, like he would confess his love, and then he would still have to die, and that would mean something to us, and it would feel it. That's all not there.
In some ways, I could feel a version of this being like reverse Fast and the Furious, like the first one, because you kind of don't know he's a cop or FBI agent or whatever he is,
and then he starts and he becomes part of the
and then you realize, and then it's, I guess Point Break's a little like that, but in the beginning they don't tell you he's an FBI agent. Like, I could see this movie doing the same thing with Trevor, is like up until the midpoint or the break into 3, we don't know, and then we flip it, and then it's like, oh, he's a bad guy, but then we see that he's struggling on the inside with good and bad. There's a version of this that could have done that.
Instead, he's like a deer in headlights. He's like, by the way, I'm evil. I guess. Sorry, I told you not to open it. It's really odd how non-committal he is. Like, I told you not to open it.
I mean,
that was it.
What do you want from me? We had some sex.
There could have been a theme. I'm just saying, there's a little movie with Trevor that is not the off-screen Trevor movie.
And again, maybe it was on the page,
it might
and
have
then in the edit, they took it away. So maybe it would be really interesting to see. So for me, I think a big answer why this movie isn't as riveting as I mean it could have been is because of that complete lack of orientation of the villain, of Voight as a villain. until like 82 minutes in, when we understand what the hell he's doing. So yeah, I think that's instructive. Like, if you have a villain with a plan who's orchestrating everything, there's value in checking in every 10 minutes to see how they feel. They have like, it's apples and oranges genre wise, but like Hans Gruber, as soon as the plan is set into motion, there's 15 goal status updates, and we never go more than 5 minutes without one. And that's why he's such a compelling villain, because we're so on top of what he's doing, why he's doing it, how he feels about it, that we have this really vested interest in John McClane stopping him because of it. And because we don't have that with Voight, it's kind of like, whatever. As long as they don't get killed by the monsters, I guess it's fine.
It's also just unclear about Voight wants the wish, but he also, the last thing I'll say about him is he tells Riley it's all a lie. It's all a lie.
Mm-hmm.
But the second he gets freedom from his current agony, he instantly leaps into asking for I'm like, but it was a lot. You said to her was, number one, why are you surprised? What happened? I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's very odd. It's like
it's all right. Lie, and he's like, oh, they're here.
Yeah, and then I don't know. It's just very odd. Like, the thought process of the characters just does not make a lot of sense.
It's very confusing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think that's
everything I wanted to rant about on the villain side of things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame because there's so much about the movie that's awesome.
Same. I know. I agree.
It really is, but
yeah, this one was more a process of just kind of figuring out why it wasn't, resonating with me in a bigger way than it was. Because there's so many things I do like about it.
Yeah, we didn't talk about a lot of the positive.
Yeah. Well,
I think the positives aren't the script. I think that's the reason. The positives are the whiteboarding of the Cenobites, the makeup, the execution. I think the direction and acting is great. It's not that, we're talking about we're a script podcast, so that's unfortunately the negative.
It's not even like some of the other reboots that you go off on and you just kind of are like, why would do they even understand the franchise? It's not like that at all. They get it.
They definitely get the Cenobites and Hellraiser and the priest. Pinhead was great.
Yeah, she was fantastic.
Jamie Clayton was great. She's just, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
It's sadly. I'm just trying to clarify that we didn't hate the movie.
No.
Yeah.
I put it number 3, as we said.
Yeah, you put it number 3. I'm putting it a little lower, but even then, it's still a very good Hellraiser movie.
I've only seen 3, and it's at number 3, so take that for what you want.
It's hard to beat the first two.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it, right, guys?
Yeah. Do you have anything to plug, Jamie?
No, I will be in Austin this week. I will be in Austin. I'm sorry, it's next week, I guess. You'll know if you're there, you'll be there. It's not like you're going to fly out there this week and say, you weren't there.
Jamie's going to be there.
Jamie. I was walking around the streets screaming.
I showed up in the center of Austin.
So I'll be at the Austin Film Festival. It's funny, my book comes out November 1st, my new book, but it hasn't been announced yet, so I guess I won't announce it. But if you searched it, you might find some weird page that doesn't have any good information on it, but you'll see what it is. But probably next podcast, I should be announcing that because it comes out November 1st.
Like always, awesome. Just follow all of us on Twitter and you'll probably see anything we do.
Yes, absolutely.
Check Jamie's Twitter feed and he'll announce, I'm assuming all of it, right?
Yeah. One other thing, for locals, we're doing a bunch of screenings. Like they're doing 2 Night Watchman screenings locally in Maryland. One's in Annapolis and one is in Frederick, and they're coming up like in the next, I think they're both in November. And they're kind of big things, like they're going to have food and, I'm not sure if there's drinks and stuff involved, but anyway, they seem to be they're kind of doing like 5th anniversary because we didn't theatrical releases. So if you're in Maryland, go check them out. I'll be at least one of them. I'm not sure if I'll go to both of them, but I'll go to one of them.
So go out there and, talk to Jamie a little bit too long in the lobby.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, everyone else is trying to talk to you. But I think I don't have anything. So
I don't have anything. So
well, this has been fun. And also, just a reminder to anyone listening, the episode before this one, we did the original Hellraiser movie from the 80s. So if you want to listen to the 1-2 punch to compare, we did that. We got that for you.
Yes.
Yeah. But other than that, everybody, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yep. Bye-bye.
You have just listened to Writer's Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy.